So this whole thing kicks off in a pretty random way, and honestly that's how most of these situations start online lately. Before we even get into what Karlissa Saffold said, you have to understand the mood NBA YoungBoy was already in. This wasn't a guy having a calm, quiet week. He had already been going back and forth with people on Instagram over comments about unnamed rappers, comments that a lot of fans immediately connected to Future, especially with Future's 10th studio album, The Real Me, dropping right around the same time. So there was already tension sitting in the background before Karlissa's name ever entered the conversation. Then Blueface hopped on a live stream with his mother, and that's when things took a sharp turn nobody really saw coming. During that stream, Blueface and Karlissa were talking about his education, specifically about him passing a certain test, and somewhere in that conversation Karlissa brought NBA YoungBoy's name into it. Different clips caught slightly different phrasing of what she said, but the gist was consistent across every version that circulated. In one clip picked up by YoungBoy Access, she said something along the lines of NBA YoungBoy being a dummy **** or something, before quickly trying to soften it by adding that she loved him and his mother. In another version that made rounds through the shade room, her comment was framed around the idea of him lying about his education, something like him trying to act like he actually finished school when, in her words, he didn't graduate. Now here's the thing about clips like this, they rarely spread with full context attached. What spreads is the punchline, the one line that sounds the most explosive out of context, and in this case that was the dumb comment. It got clipped, it got reposted, and within what felt like no time at all it landed directly in NBA YoungBoy's timeline. And if you know anything about how YoungBoy responds to things people say about him online, you already know silence wasn't going to be the move. Thursday night, he took to his Instagram story and went straight at both Karlissa and, by extension, Blueface. He didn't hold back at all. He called Blueface's son a series of insults, questioned Karlissa's personal life, and basically framed the whole exchange as her overstepping into something that had nothing to do with her. It was blunt, it was aggressive, and it read exactly like someone who felt disrespected and wanted the response to hit just as hard as the original comment did. But it didn't stop with Karlissa. While he was in that mode, Blueface's girlfriend Nevaeh got pulled into it too, seemingly out of nowhere from the outside looking in. YoungBoy brought up a tattoo she reportedly had covered up under her eye, and he alleged that it used to say his real name, Cantrell, hinting at some kind of past connection or rumor that had apparently been floating around quietly before this moment. That's obviously a serious claim to drop into an already heated public exchange, and it added a whole new layer to the story that had nothing to do with the original education comment that started everything in the first place. So now you've got three people pulled into one blow-up, Karlissa, Blueface, and Nevaeh, and YoungBoy telling everyone watching to basically stop playing with him, like this was a warning shot as much as a response. Here's where it gets interesting though, because this didn't stay in full attack mode for long. NBA YoungBoy ended up hopping on a live stream with Offset, and that conversation seemed to shift his energy pretty noticeably. Offset gave him some advice, encouraging him to focus on other things instead of getting caught up in back and forth arguments online. On that same stream, YoungBoy admitted he needed to stop letting emotional things get to him, saying he let some other frustration hurt him and that's really what set him off in the first place. He told Offset he appreciated the check-in and said he was sorry, both to Offset directly and to the people he had gone off on. He even said he had flashed out and that the conversation made him stop and reflect on it. That moment is honestly one of the more grounded parts of this whole story, because YoungBoy has a track record of these online flare-ups, and it's not that common to see him publicly walk something back that quickly. He didn't just quietly delete a post and move on, he actually said out loud that he overreacted, and Offset even brought up something lighter in the middle of it, asking him to wish his daughter Culture a happy birthday, which softened the whole exchange a bit. Now, around this same period, there's a side detail worth mentioning because it shows just how much was going on with him at once. He had also gone off at Future in a separate post that same Thursday night, warning an unnamed rapper not to flop with their album, which fans quickly tied to Future given the timing of The Real Me's release. The very next day, after the conversation with Offset, he seemed to soften toward Future too, at least briefly, offering something like an apology in that same wave of calming down. But that didn't fully stick. Shortly after, he doubled back and went right back at Future with more insults, calling him out for supposedly flopping and bringing up a strange detail about Future allegedly wanting to buy his antique closet, a comment that ended up becoming its own separate viral moment because of how random it sounded. He also told Offset directly that he was done responding to people altogether, on his daughter, as he put it. So the Future situation stayed messy and largely unresolved even as the Karlissa and Blueface situation started moving toward an actual resolution. That's an important distinction here, because while one beef kept flaring back up over and over, the other one, the one with Karlissa, actually reached a real, visible conclusion, and that's the part most people ended up talking about the most once the dust settled. So after YoungBoy's response went viral and the internet had already picked its sides in the comments, Karlissa showed up on Blueface stream again. And this time the tone was completely different. She reportedly asked Blueface directly if he could call NBA YoungBoy so she could apologize to him. That's a pretty telling move, because instead of just posting a statement or letting it blow over quietly, she wanted an actual moment where she could say sorry, even if it was just over a phone call in front of an audience watching live. On that stream she explained herself, saying she never meant to call him dumb in the way people took it, that what she actually meant was that he didn't graduate high school, and that she felt terrible once she realized how it came across. She described feeling worked up in the moment and talking too fast, which led to her saying something she said she regretted almost immediately. It's worth noting she also brought up statistics at one point, trying to frame her original comment as more of an observation about rappers and education in general rather than a personal insult aimed at YoungBoy specifically. She even referenced a comparison she had looked into about which rappers finished school versus which ones dropped out or got their GED, something she shared on her Instagram story as part of trying to explain where her comment actually came from in the first place. She didn't stop at the stream either. She went to her Instagram story directly and tagged both NBA YoungBoy and his mother, writing out a clarification that she never meant to call him dumb, that her point was about him not graduating high school, and that she loved both of them. She followed that with another message making it clear she was speaking on statistics, admitting flat out that she was wrong and that she was sorry. She then added one more note directed at both YoungBoy and his mother, essentially closing the loop with a simple apology and telling them again that she loved them, calling it her bad in her own words. And on Blueface's side, once that apology moment happened, he hopped on his stream and told his chat that NBA YoungBoy is actually a good guy, accepting the apology situation on his end too and speaking positively about him instead of continuing any tension. So by the end of it, you had all three people, YoungBoy, Karlissa, and Blueface, landing in a place that looked a lot calmer than where the story started less than a day earlier. It's worth stepping back here too, because this whole situation didn't happen in a vacuum. NBA YoungBoy has had a pretty turbulent stretch on social media in general lately, well beyond just this one exchange. Earlier this year he faced a wave of backlash after a heated public exchange with one of his baby mothers escalated into comments about his own child, which led to him deactivating his accounts for a period of time. His mother, Sharonda, even stepped in publicly during that situation to defend him and reassure people that his kids were always welcome around her regardless of the drama swirling online. So when you look at the Karlissa and Blueface situation next to everything else, it fits into a broader pattern of YoungBoy getting pulled into public disputes and then, at least in some cases, walking things back once he's had a moment to cool down, sometimes with someone like Offset stepping in to redirect him. It's also worth pointing out how fast and chaotic YoungBoy's delivery was during all of this, because that itself became part of the conversation online. When the footage of his rant against Future got reposted, a lot of people in the comments admitted they could barely follow what he was saying. Several viewers joked that the only phrase they could actually make out clearly was the line about the antique closet, with one commenter saying he talks so fast that was really the only part that landed. Another person joked that the clips needed subtitles, and someone else said they were completely lost trying to figure out what he was even saying. Even Offset, according to some of the reactions floating around, seemed a little thrown off by the pace of it all. It's a small detail, but it says a lot about how these moments spread online, because half the reason clips like this go viral isn't just the content, it's the confusion and the memes that come out of people trying to decode what was actually said in real time. Now naturally, once all of this made its way to the shade room and started circulating through comment sections, people had a lot to say. Some fans jumped straight into defending YoungBoy, pointing out that he doesn't seem to care who he's responding to, whether it's a fellow rapper or someone's mother, and that he's going to say what he wants regardless of who's on the other end. One comment summed up that energy pretty directly, basically saying YoungBoy doesn't care who you are, he's going to be himself regardless. Other comments took a more critical view of Karlissa, suggesting she probably shouldn't have brought his name up in the first place, with one person pointing out that she should have just kept his name out of the conversation entirely and none of this would have happened. And that's really the heart of how this whole thing plays out when you zoom all the way out. A conversation about Blueface education, something that had nothing to do with NBA YoungBoy on the surface, somehow turned into a multi-person public apology tour within the span of about a day. It started with one offhand comment during a live stream, spiraled into insults being thrown at 3 different people, briefly pulled in a whole separate situation involving Future and Offset, and then wrapped up with Karlissa going live specifically to make things right, posting multiple story updates to clarify herself, and Blueface publicly vouching for YoungBoy's character once everyone had cooled off. Whether this stays fully resolved or flares back up again the way the future situation did remains to be seen, especially given how quickly things have shifted throughout this whole stretch for YoungBoy. But as of right now, based on everything that's been shared across these streams and stories, Karlissa, Blueface, and NBA YoungBoy all appear to be on good terms, with apologies given and accepted on both sides. Whether the internet lets it stay that quiet is a whole different question, because if this timeline has shown us anything over the last few days, it's that things can shift again just as fast as they blew up in the first place. What makes this particular situation stand out from a lot of the other back and forth YoungBoy has been involved in lately is how quickly it actually got resolved compared to some of his other conflicts. The future situation, for example, went through multiple rounds of apologizing and then immediately going back on it, and it never really reached a clean ending the way the Karlissa situation did. With Karlissa, you had a clear sequence: the original comment, the response, the intervention from Offset, and then a public apology that both sides seemed to accept without any of the back and forth flip-flopping that showed up elsewhere. That's honestly part of why this story ended up getting so much attention on its own, separate from everything else going on with YoungBoy that same week. It wasn't just another rant that faded into the timeline, it had an actual arc to it, a beginning, an escalation, and a resolution that played out across multiple live streams in a pretty short window of time. At the end of the day, this is one of those situations where you can look at it from a few different angles depending on who you're inclined to side with. You can look at Karlissa's original comment and see how something meant as an offhand remark about statistics and education ended up getting read as a direct insult once it was clipped and taken out of the full conversation. You can also look at YoungBoy's response and recognize that regardless of how the comment was originally meant, his reaction was swift and unfiltered in the way his reactions typically are. And you can look at the ending, where both people made a visible effort to walk things back publicly instead of letting it linger, and take that as a sign that even in the middle of a chaotic week online, there was still some willingness on both sides to actually fix things rather than let the story keep spiraling. However you land on it, this is exactly the kind of moment that shows how quickly a livestream conversation about something as ordinary as a high school diploma can turn into a full-blown viral story involving 3 separate public figures, all within the span of a single day.